Hello, good evening. Tonight I'm going to talk about the fact value problem which Sir Alex gave it to us, which involve the science, the ethics. It is the conflict between them, and then it says here the distinct in the thin line between what is truth and what is right. So we're going to talk about the truth and the right. So next, in every system of morality that I have encountered thus far, I have always observed that the author proceeds in the ordinary way of reasoning from a time, establishing the existence of God or making observations about human affairs, when all of the sudden, instead of the usual copulations of prepositions, is and is not, I mean, I meet with no prepositions that is not connected within ought or ought not, Humes and treasures of human natures and David. So it talks about the human affairs, uh, like we're gonna go talk about the truth or maybe the lie, or there are some instances that we should not tell the truth, which is the perspective and the descriptive. So we're gonna talk about that later. And says here, rants are common in media and personal conversations about moral problems like abortion, uh, euthanasia, sexual morality, and capital punishment. Our moral judgments are frequently based on assumptions rather than fact. So, these lessons, we talked about this in the past week. Talks about the abortions, like something that uh, if abortion is not good or it is bad, so is it prescriptive to do that in some ways, or maybe there are some instances that the girl will be raped, or the uh, that woman is being harassed by some people, and then is it okay that they will gonna divorce that husband, and then they're gonna abort that child. So here, fact value problems. The problem of determining whether values are essentially differ from facts, whether moral assessments are derived or gonna be good from facts, and whether moral statement can be true or false like factual statements. So the issue of deciding or or being good if values are basically not quite the same as realities, whether moral appraisals are gotten from realities, and whether moral proclamations can be valid or bogus like verifiable explanation. So, the method of inquiry used to address the fact values problem is known as mathematics. So what is going on with mathematics? So mathematics is a part of insightful way of thinking that investigates the status, established, and existence of virtuous properties and words. So it talks about uh, the thinking of some statues of establishment or some companies like that, virtues, and uh, what you have. So it says here in Hume and Morse, the problem classified state. So David Hume's the fallacies of derived out from is. So in David Hume's, we talk about the fallacy of derived out from is. So and George Edward Moore, the naturally fallacy. So let's go. The fallacy of deriving out from is human doings in 1711 to 1776. These theories began by observing some specific facts about the world, and then they conclude that this same statement about moral obligation. So, as would be natural from him, they move from explanations about what is the situation proclaimed about that should be in that situations. So in his words, they move the statements about what is in the case of the statements about what we ought to be in that case. So it is about the proclamations should be the situations. Next. So this is the examples of the fallacy in ordinal theories. Number one, God exists, therefore we should obey God's moral command. So we should obey God's moral command. So God exists, therefore we should obey. Should obey. God will punish and reward us in the afterlife. Therefore, we should behave morally. So we should be we should be good in any other ways, so that God will not punish us and He will reward us in the future. People are sociable creatures, therefore we should behave morally. So people are, uh, uh, shall we say, they are in in some ways, they are in other ways, and then they're gonna do this thing and they're gonna do this thing, and sometimes they're gonna be tempted or in any other way. So it says here in our fallacy in theories, or in history, we should be behave our morality. Without rules, society will fall into chaos. Therefore, we should behave our morality. So without the law, without the without these commandments, we should be fall into society. So mga badlongon na kaita. So there are two examples of sophisticical moral theories. So number one is, through reasons we can detect eternal truth about behavior. Therefore, we should behave morally and informed by our reasons. So there is a sort of institution that recognizes improper lead. Therefore, we ought to act ethically as educated by this institution. There is a kind of sixth sense that detects inappropriate conduct. Therefore, we should behave morally and informed by the sixth sense. So, therefore, we ought to act ethically as educated by this institution. So, uh, we school about in here at the spec. We should behave ourselves, and we should act like we are being educated already. So here the naturalistic fallacy. So George Edward Moore, 1903. Moore published his Principia Ethica, which inspired an ongoing inquiry among contemporary ethics into such methical issues and the meaning of ethical terms and the relationship of facts and value. Moore claims philosophy has been entangled in ethical problems largely because they are not clearly defined the theory of ethics and determine the kinds of situations that philosophers can be asked about the subject. So, next, ethics involves the practical task of arriving at decisions making procedures from moral good behavior. We need to discover the meaning of the term good and the foundation of ethics and understanding of the term. So, for us, we talk about good, and then the good thing is we're gonna make God happy as well. Talk about that. Like Hume's fallacy of deriving oath from is more naturally fallacy in other ways of articulating the fact value problems. According to Moore, the problems of goodness cannot be undefined with facts like maximizing pleasures and being more involved. They are instead of gap between facts and values, or they have been gap between facts and values. So more own situations to the problem was this can be typically recognize the presence of values. So we need to find the facts within them. So Ayers and emotivism. Alfred Jules Ayer, 1910 to 1989, who was influenced both by Hume's and Moore's presentation about the facts and values. So here, Ayers also takes this two-pronged approach. First, he argues that the fact values arises because moral statement cannot pass a critical test of meaning called the verification principle. So it talks about the the identification of something or someone. So second, expanding on Hume's, his situation is the moral utterance are only express of feelings, a position called emotiveness. So it talks about the emotions of something, someone. Our situation to the fact values problem is not that moral words function is a special non-functional way. Uh, Although they are indeed functionally meaningless, they are not just nonsense. The philosophers distinguish between mental and non-cognitive statements. So la- later, or I'm gonna talk about that. But in the past, we talk about the philosophy. So what is the importance of philosophy by reading it and understanding the Bible with the philosophy. So the philosophy and the philosophers are there important because they talk about the reasoning, the critical thinking about some other words that we can't understand. Ayer says moral words express our feelings. So moral words express our feelings and are not factually meaningful. Morality does not involve a reasoning ability and ethical disagreement or disagreement in attitude. So hair and prescriptiveness. Ayer is the most famous for the emotivity theory that we've just examined. However, his prescriptive function of moral utterness, they commanded and recommend and command that other adopts our attitude. So talks about our attitude. So there are four, but there are only three here. So let's go into it. They are prescriptive. So the moral judgments are what? They are prescriptive. They exhibit logical relations. They involve principles. So when we talk about the principles, it talks about the human affairs or the attitude of someone, including me. When you love someone, we should have principle. Like when someone get out there, they should have some principles not to do some things or bad things, or not to do the the things that their part will gonna be in ruin someday. So talks about the prescriptivity. According to Hare, moral judgments have been a prescriptive facts and prescriptive values elements. So prescriptive component is directing, directing and suggests that other takes on our worth on the mourner. So when we talk about this descriptive or this prescriptive, there are some facts that we should not said because maybe something that they will be ruined in their lives, and there are some things that we should say so that something or someone will be exiled, just like that. Universability, universalizability. In making moral judgment, one should make the same judgment in all similar cases. A judgment is not more unless the agent is prepared to universe his or her principles. Universalizability is a necessary condition. If a principle is moral, then implies universally. So, it is enough condition if a principle implies universally, there is a moral. So, it talks about the moral judgment principles. Centrality of principle is moral reasoning. Joseph Fisher said in his book Situation Ethics relates the following stories of illustrating his thesis the principles are unnecessary for moral reasoning. Why? So Hare argues that all moral reasoning involves principles, and they without principles most teachers will be impossible because we usually teach not particular items but a set of action guiding principles. So without doing, so you're useless because you're not doing something that would make something possible. So this is, we don't learn isolated individual acts but classes of acts within classes of situations. They serve as major premises in our moral judgment. We acquire or learn in basic set of principles. We learn when to use or to subordinate these principles. We choose our own principles and we must commit to them, universalizing them. So we should um, we should use our principle in good ways, in in that will make something or someone happy someday. Let's move at this slide because so here naturalism and open-ended argument. So Moore would charge the Warnock commits the naturalism fallacy. So Moore's theory regards the idea of goodness as thoughts in was thing, the fallacy of hypothesization. It's a category mistake to treat a functional term as thought it was a thing. So, in conclusion, Hume's values or judgments are emotional reaction that we have to specific facts, such as our reactions within seeing someone donated to charity. So, more values judgment involves intuitively recognizing values or good within facts or maximizing pleasure through a charity. So, your value statements are merely expressions of feelings that we make and responsible to the facts such as myth, donating to charity, or position called emotiveness. So here we're gonna end our topic about the fact value problems. So we should do the same thing, just like making charity, making money to some people so that they will be happy. You're gonna make something or someone happy and they're gonna be blessed someday. So our topic has been ended. Thank you and God bless everyone.